So take a copy of it with you even when you graduate. You'll find it helpful. If you scroll down here a little bit, let's see, AutoCAD Dimension Styles. So if we click AutoCAD Dimension Styles, the very first one that we go through is creating a mechanical decimal inch style. So a mechanical imperial style, right? English. So it kind of goes through, start an imperial drawing. You don't need to do that because you already did it. That's your Mod 2 drawing. And then you're going to use the Dimstyle Manager. Now, there are a lot of tabs, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tabs. You only need to change data in 5 of them. So the last 2 you don't touch at all. And here's the nice thing. You'll notice that, right? We have the line tab current, and we have ellipses around the values that you need to change. Do not change anything else. It's amazing how a simple change will cause everything to kind of go cattywampus on you, right? So only change the values that are ellipsed. Is that a word, ellipsed? Yeah, it's a word. I just said it, right? It's got to be a word, right? So, right now we're in the symbols and arrows tab, and then these would be the values that you would need to change, right? So once you're done, if you would prefer to set up your dim style by doing that, feel free. I'm going to do it right here for you. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze these dimensions. I'm going to mirror this. I'm going to use the mirror command. I'll put this back so this looks just like yours does. All right, there we go. All right, so everything here should look exactly the way you submitted your drawing. All right. Now, the one thing that's going to be different is this. When I type dimension here, I've got a couple extra dim styles. Well, I've got 2 extra dim styles, and I'm missing 1 dim style that you guys will see. Yeah, check this out. In your drawing, when you started, and this is old, right? This drawing was done 20 years ago, I bet. Right? So when you open your Dim Style Manager, all you're going to see is annotative and standard. Right? So these are the 2 that came with the template, the acad.dwt template, when you started your drawing from that template. Why do you have these? Well, because they were inside of that template. So these are the 2 that you will see. All right. I'm just going to do it inside of this drawing because we're here. And again, obviously I've created a couple of dim styles. And the other thing to note is there's no default annotative style here. Why? Because there wasn't an annotative style when I first did this drawing. They didn't exist yet, but doesn't matter. You guys can still follow along with me doing it here. Or I guess we could do this. Let me do this. I'm going to do COPY-BASE, and I'll just pick. This is the base point. Let's grab that, and I'll just put it in this drawing over here. So let's stick this here, and obviously I grabbed. Obviously, I grabbed something that had that dim style on it, but that's okay. So this is exactly how you'll see your drawing. Maybe this will make it easier for you guys to understand. All right, now we're going to start a new dim style. So we'll choose new, and I want to start with annotative. I'm going to choose annotative to start with, and for a name, mechanical, I'm going to start with the discipline, then the units. So English or Imperial, whatever you want to call it. E-N-G-L-I-S-H. And then lastly, I'm going to put annotative on the end because it's a annotative style. We'll explain what that means in a second. All right, let's choose continue. And I'm going to go through and do the same settings that are right here. And again, you can just refer back to here if you prefer. So under lines and arrows, baseline spacing 0.25. And I just showed you guys that had to be 0.25. Let's do this. I'm going to close this up. And let me put my... Oh, I didn't bring the dims in with this one, but I do have them over here. What was 0.25? Well, it was this distance right here. Right, so from here to here. That's the 0.25 distance that we're referring to when we set that value, right? So I'll come here, I'll come back in, I'll choose modify, and come back. That is that 0.25. Right? Okay. Now, the extension beyond dim lines and the offset from origin, well, that was the gap between, right? Offset from origin was the gap between the object that we're dimensioning and where the extension line starts. Extension beyond dim line was how far the extension line goes past the dim line. And we said those should both be 0.06. So I'll just change that one. 0625 is absolutely fine. You want to get rid of the 25, you're more than welcome to. Okay, that's all we need to change there. We can jump here. An arrow size, an ASME arrowhead is 0.125. Right? When we're done here, I'll show you how to create your own if you want to use a custom arrowhead as opposed to one of these that come with AutoCAD. And let's see, your mark, 0.06. And nothing else needs to change here. Now let's go to text, and I'll click my ellipses. And you guys already have a Romanesque style, so all you need to do is just choose. Well, you didn't even need to go to the ellipses. You'd only need to pick the ellipses if you hadn't created a Romanesque style. But hopefully most of you did. If you didn't, make sure that you do. It should be a style called Romanesque with a Romanesque font. It's not annotative, and it does not have a height set. Okay, and I'm going to use that for, I'm going to use that for my style in my Dimstyle. Text height for ASME dim text is 0.125. And everything else is good here, right? It's always going to be centered, and you want it to be horizontal. So that's all going to be fine. All right. Let's come over here to fit. Now, if we're dimensioning and we cannot fit the arrowheads and the text between the extension lines, the first thing to go would be the arrowheads. We put the arrowheads to the outside and point in toward the text, which is still between the extension lines. Right? And let's see, it is annotative because we started with annotative. If you hadn't, you forgot, all you had to do is just click annotative here. Now, primary units, I think we have 2 decimal places on this drawing, so I'll choose 2. And I want to suppress leading zeros. So I don't want any leading zeros. I don't want 0.5, right? I would just want 0.5 if I place, which we are going to place here. Right? And let's see, I think that's it. Okay, so now we have an ASME mechanical English style, but this is needs to be changed a little bit if we're going to add diameter dimensions or radial dimensions. And what we can do is we can create what's called child variations. A child's going to take on all of the properties from the parent, mechanical English Anno, except for the things I explicitly set in the child. So let's do that. I'm going to select the parent. I'll choose New. Come down. This is going to be for radius. Continue. So this is only for radial if I add a radial dimension with this parent style. Under lines, I want to suppress extension line 1. Symbols and arrow, I want none. We add our, center marks, I want none. I don't know why it's symbols and arrows in the head. We add our center marks ourselves. We've already added them to our drawing using what? We set our dimsend variable to a negative value, and then we use the DCE command to add our center marks. We don't want a center mark bound to our dimension, so we'll do none. And then under fit, we want both text and arrows, and we want to be able to place our text manually. Otherwise, it would lock in where the actual dimension could go. Let's do that. I'm going to uncheck this. I'll leave it unchecked, and then we'll have to fix it so I can show you what happens if you don't do it. All right, now I'm going to pick the parent one more time. We'll choose New. This is going to be for diameter, and it's going to be the same exact settings, but we do not need to suppress extension line 1. Symbols and arrows, we'll choose none. Under fit, both text and arrows, and place text manually. And again, I did not check that for radial, and we'll show you what happens when we do it. All right, good. I can now pick this. I have a perfect ASME style. I've set it current. I'm going to close that up. Now, when we add our dimensions, we're going to add them in model space, but more specifically, we're going to add them in floating model space. So not model space here, but model space within a layout. So you guys already have a layout set. Let me set this one up. So I'll go to Page Setup Manager, Modify, High Quality PDF, High Quality PDF, 1117. So ANSI B 1117, it's not full bleed, it's not expanded, it's just ANSI B 1117. Close that up. Obviously, you need a VP layer. So let's create a couple layers. One we need for our viewport, it's going to be no plot. The other we're going to need dim, and our dim is going to be plot. Choose your color. I don't care what color you pick. I tend to use green. And it should be continuous and thin. Right? So default is fine. And I'll just make that current since I'm going to be using it. All right, while we're here, let's stick that on the viewport layer. I can now change the size of this. Double click inside. I'm going to pan to the center. I'm going to shut off that stupid grid. And I'll set my scale. 1 to 1 is going to be just fine for this. As soon as I set my scale, I don't want to do anything else because I might accidentally do that. And now my scale is no longer 1 to 1. Right? So as soon as I set it, I want to lock my viewport. I mean, I can pan if I need it to pan a little bit. But I'm going to make sure it's 1 to 1 and lock my viewport. Right, now I can't accidentally change that scale. All right, now in Paperspace, you know you should have your title block. I'm not going to fill it out, but I'll just insert it here. Why not? I think I just downloaded a copy of it. Yeah, there we go. And that goes at 0, 0. And you guys would fill it out. I'm just going to choose OK. And obviously it does not go on the dim layer. It goes on the border layer. So I'm going to switch that. And now I can just do a quick preview. And that looks fantastic, bar the fact that I haven't filled out my title block. All right, so now we need some dimensions. I'm going to double click. I add my dimensions in floating model space in a scaled lock viewport. Let me say it one more time. I'm going to add my dimensions in floating model space within a layout in a scaled locked viewport. Other than that, there's no reason to add your dimensions. Okay, so let's start right over here, and we'll do DLI, dimension linear. Folks, all the dimensions I'm about to do are under the Annotate tab. You'll find them here under the drop-down. And then continue in baseline or over here. There's also quick dimension. You guys don't have to worry about that in this class. You will have to worry about it in 160, next semester's class. DLI, dimension linear. And I can put this first dimension, so I can come from here to here. And I'm going to track. You notice I'm not over here. I'm not over here. I can actually see the extension tracking going on. And I want to be what? Well, we said 0.375 from the part. So I'll type 0.375, and that's exactly how far above I want to be. I'm going to just make a quick setting here. I want to track orthogonally only. That way I'm not getting all those tracking vectors other than horizontal and vertical. All right, now, so that's 375. That's perfect. Baseline dimension, DLI, is what? It's 0.25 above that one. So I could do DLI again, and I could just hover anywhere on that dimension and track. So I can hover, start tracking, 0.25. It's kind of a pain, though. It would be nice if that happened automatically, right? So let's get rid of this, and what we'll do is instead we'll use dimension baseline. And that is right here. The command for it is DBA. Well, more importantly, the alias. The command is dim baseline. It'd be tough to type. So dim baseline, and now since it doesn't know which baseline to use, it's asking me to pick a baseline. So I'm going to pick right there, and I'll pop that dimension in, and you can see it automatically places it 0.25 above the first dimension, which is 375 above the part. Why? Well, because that was the very first value that we set in our Dimstyle. Anytime we do a baseline dimension, put it 0.25 above the baseline dimension, the base one. All right, so let's come over here. If you do it all at once, so if I do DLI and I click, I put my first dimension out here, 375 from the part, and then I just do DBA, it'll automatically grab that last extension line as the baseline. Right? If it doesn't, again, you just have to, you just have to pick it, right? So you'd have to pick the one that you want, right? Just like that. Good. Okay, so there's your right side. Now we have a couple of dimensions over here. We have to dimension the center of this circle, and we're going to be dimensioning to the cross here. So we're going to get rid of this extension line. We don't want a line over a line, so we're going to get rid of that. Nobody's going to gripe if you get the drawing back because you didn't do it, because I just said we got to get rid of that. Right, so it's pretty straightforward. All right, DLI. Dimension linear, we don't pick the center, we pick the end. So dimension linear. I'm going to click, and if you guys want, I don't need to track. I know that's 375, but in the beginning, if it's easier, you can track, right? Okay, so you'll notice I have the same gap all the way around. And you'd be surprised, even after saying that, how many times I'll get this and I send a drawing back to a student because they give me this. Right? Okay, so that's how it should look. All right, so now what do we have? Well, we have this diameter dimension. We have this radial dimension that we need. I'm going to do the diameter dimension first, DDI. And I know that needs to be 375 from the part, so I'm just going to track right over from this one. And it should line up exactly with this one. Makes sense, right? Now, the other thing to note is your dimensions, your radial and diameter dimensions, you don't want them too tall or too horizontal. Shoot for about 45 degrees. I think the standard says it should be between 15 and 75. So I kind of shoot for, 45, 50 degrees or so. Doesn't matter what quadrant it's in. So it could be over here, could be down here or over here. It couldn't in this case because we don't want our dims on our part. But it can be in any of the four quadrants. It just wants to be around 45 degrees in that quadrant. That's all. Okay, now we do what? DRA, so dimension radius, and again, these are all up here if you'd rather just use the buttons. And I want this radial dimension, and you're going to notice that I'm trying to come over here and track again to put this dimension up where it goes. It's not letting me, and the reason it's not is because I forgot purposely, but I did forget to select under Fit, Place Text Manually. So let's do that. Let's close this up. Let's go back to DRA. And now you'll notice it lets me put it where I want to put it. AutoCAD does not care if you meet ASME standards. It's up to you to do it. It does not do it. It doesn't know what standard you want to use. It just knows you want to add dimensions, right? Okay, so there you go. There's our front dims. Perfect. And now we just have a couple of dims up here. So we have DLI. And I've got one that goes from here to here. That's going to sit right there. DBA, dimension baseline. You'll notice it's using the wrong baseline, so I'll use the select option. I'll pick this as my baseline. I'll put that proper. And then I'll do DRA, and I'll slap my radial dimension right there. And this entire part is properly dimensioned. Right? And all you have to do is follow exactly what happens in the handout, right? It's exactly how it looks in the handout, and you just need to match what's in the handout and pass it in and get an A. So it's relatively straightforward to do it, I hope. Right? Good, everybody okay with that one? Piece of cake? All right, I'm going to open up. Let's see here. What time is it? Oh, we're only a half hour in. We've got plenty of time. I'm going to open up 3A here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what annotative dimensions mean while we're here. And I'm going to assume I probably have a annotative Dimstyle already set up here, right? I don't like the name though. Let me rename this. And again, I like mechanical, but MECHENGLISHANO, right? That explains or describes this so much better. Now, why do I care about that? Well, I care about it because of this. I do save as. So this is just sitting in my download. So I'm going to save this. Okay. Now I'm going to start a new drawing here. So I'll do File, New. And I'll just start with ACAD DWT. Eventually, you guys are going to create your own templates. But I go through, and now I do my drawing, and I need a dim style here. Well, I can actually use a AutoCAD Design Center, ADC. And I can use AutoCAD Design Center to bring a dimension style, or really any entities, from one drawing into another drawing. So I'll type ADC. And now what I can do is I can browse to that drawing. Right? So if I come over here, I'm going to go, C, and then I want users. And it's going to be me. And that was in downloads. And I can find the Am I in downloads? No, I'm in documents. That's why. Okay, and now I can find that that drawing. And once I find that drawing, I can go open up dim styles. And now I can see the dim styles that are in here. And you'll notice that I have what, right? A mechanical English annotative. That makes a lot of sense, right? I know exactly what it is. Now you're going to notice there's this one, then there's this one, $3, and there's this one, $4. Those are the two child variations for radial and your diameter dimension. So I'm going to grab all three, I'm going to left click, I'm going to drag, and what's going to happen is I now have that dim style in this drawing. By the way, hopefully you noticed that you could also have choose things like layers or text styles to bring them in that way too. In the beginning, I would just create a couple though for a few drawings just to get used to doing it, right? Okay, so there's a couple of things here that are a little bit quirky. And I think I've got a copy of this. Let's see if I do. Let's go back to downloads here. And I might have a copy of it. And maybe I don't, so let's not worry about it. What I can do is I'll just pull it up here. So let's go back to your content. And modules, and we'll do mod, let's see, that was mod 3, right? You're passing it in mod 5, but it was mod 3. And then under tasks, gasket. All right, here it is right here. So a couple of things here that are going to be a little bit quirky. You've got the 6x that you need to place in front of this radial dimension. The 8x in front of this diameter dimension. We have a donut up here because although we could fit the arrowheads on the outside, we couldn't get arrowheads on the inside. So we got to get rid of those arrowheads somehow and replace them with a donut. That's exactly how that should look. A couple things here I don't like, although I think there's a new version of this. But I don't like that this is 2x space radius 6. And that makes sense, right? There's one here, there's one here. We don't have a symmetry line, so we're going to put that there's two of them. But we don't have that it's 2x radius 8. Now, if we're going to have that there are two of these, then we should have that there are two of these. And I'll show you why this wasn't done. I'll show you how you can make it work. The other thing is, I just told you guys that this should not be too straight up and down. We should be shooting for 15 to 75 degrees, so I would rather see this pulled up a little bit so we can move it over. And then one last thing I'm not a big fan of here, although the spacing here is perfect. This 1/8 should be pulled up a little bit, and this 3/6 should be just dragged down a little bit to make this more clear, concise, and obviously unambiguous, right? All right, so let's do that, and I'll show you how to make these all work. All right, so double click. Oops. I'm not locked, so I'm going to make sure this viewport is locked. So I'm in floating model space, 1-to-1 scale. Make sure my viewport is locked. Now I can zoom around in floating model space without accidentally changing that scale. And let's see if we have a... we do, but I have the dims frozen, right? So we're going to re-add our dims, so let's just add a new layer. And I'll just do dim 1 or something, right? Highlight green, so I'm going to go with green. Continuous and thin. So we'll go with the default line weight, although I would rather go with 0.2 and 0.4 personally. Okay, so let's first we'll do the let's do the diameter. So DDI, and we can place this dimension. We'll pull this and we'll put that right down there. That's perfect. Now we need the 8x diameter 3.5 in front. And the two ways we could do it. One, if I select, I right click, I go to properties. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to, under text, I'm going to find text override. And I'll type 8 capital X with a space. And then I'm going to put a less than and greater than symbol there. The less than and greater than symbol just represents the size of the entity that the dimension is associated with. In this case, that circle. So if I come right here, I get my, and I'm going to just move this over a little bit now so it's not so straight up and down. keeps snapping back to itself. There we go. That's better. Right there is pretty good. Now, we can tell that it's still associative even though we modified the value, because if we change the size here, that value will update. And I'll tell you, I'll do that to everybody's drawing when I grade it. Right? Or I'll just check properties or something, right? Now, what a student might accidentally do is this. They might just come in here, right, and just overwrite the whole thing. If you overwrite the whole thing, it's not going to work, right? So you don't want to overwrite it. Come on. There we go. All right, now I'll show the other way you can do it with the DRA. So DRA, let's come over here, and we'll pop this one right here. Now we can do it in line. And the way we do it in line is this. We can double click, but we have to leave what's here. So I'm just going to arrow all the way to the left, and I'll do 6 capital X with a space, but I'll make sure that I leave this here. And what you're going to notice is this. Get rid of this. You're going to notice that AutoCAD does the same exact thing we just did by hand, by putting the less than and greater than symbol for us. So either way, whichever way you choose to do it. All right, let's come back over here. All right, let's add. Let's put a. We haven't added a angular dimension yet, so I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to type DAN, and I'm going to click the crosshair, and I'm going to click the crosshair to pull that angular dimension up, just like that. Right? That's exactly how that should look. Now it looks exactly like the handout does, right? Let's see. Let's add the rest of the. Now we have what? DLI. So dimension linear. We can do the same thing. Now we have a linear dimension, and the linear dimension is going to here. So we're going to get rid of this, and let's see. Eventually we're going to have to get rid of this and this. So I'll just get rid of these. We don't want lines over lines, so I'll grab each of these extension lines and just delete them. Okay. All right, so one more time, we could DLI. I've got a dimension that's going to go from here, and then that one goes to here, and we'll put that right there. Right? Now we could do what? I could do DLI again, but there's a command dimension continue. Remember I said if you go to annotate, you have continue and baseline together here. That would be DCO. Not DOC, but DC. Oh, come on. I actually did it. DCO, even though I typed it in wrong. And you'll notice it'll just continue from the last dimension that you did. So we could pop that one in, and the next one goes to there. We could pop that in, and you'll end up seeing what a mess we end up getting here. It's an easy fix, though. I'm going to pick this 40 dimension. I'll go to Properties, which I already have. And I need to either turn off dim line 1 or dim line 2. Always shocks me after I do this when someone turns off arrowheads instead and it doesn't look right. Well, I said dim line 1 or dim line 2, not arrowheads, right? So which one, I don't know. But I do know when I turn it off, this one shouldn't disappear. I want that one to stay. It's going to be hard to tell if the other one is turned off because there's another one that overlaps it for now. So let's just try dim line 1 and see if the first one disappears. And it doesn't, so that's got to be the one that I want to turn off. And that's exactly right there, right? Now I can go to the 5-2, and I want this one to disappear. So let's come over here. And again, I don't know if it's dim line 1 or dim line 2. You'll notice if you just hover, it'll turn it off for you. So it's not that one. It's got to be that one. Perfect. And now I just need to put a donut there. You added donuts last week in a drawing, so you know how to do that. 0 ID 0.06 for my OD, and I'm going to hover and track in line. I kid you not. You guys are going to say, there's no way. I've got this. Like, I guess it was just convenient, so. I've got it passed in just like that before. I don't know. I know you guys are saying the same thing. I don't know. I'm with you. Baffling. Oh, we need the... oh, there we go. We need the IDOD first. always forget with the donut command that you place the ID and OD before you place the actual donut itself. All right, so that one's good, pretty straightforward. Let's put the last one here, and I'm going to show you something. If I do DLI and I come from here to here, right, and then we have this final dimension that sits right here. If I do a PRE for preview, right, we know that there should be a 0.06 gap, right, between, right, whatever we're dimensioning and where we start. And there is a 0.06 gap here, but you notice you can't see it because of this arc, right? There is the gap there, but in the same thing over here, you don't see the full 06 because of that angled line. So whenever you're going to a arc or an angle, what you want to do is just grab that grip and then just pull it off a little bit. We'll do the same thing over here. I might have gone a little crazy with that one, but you can always bring it back down a little bit, right? So now if I PRE, we take a look here, right? You can see I now have an actual discernible gap. And again, I went a little crazy with this one. So let's bring that back down right to maybe to about there, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so what else do we have? Well, the last thing we have, well, you've got these radial dimensions. Those are easy. Just DRA and pop those in, right? But on the right side, I just want to talk about that spacing. Oh yeah, then we have the 2x dimensions in the middle here. Let's do those first. DRA, dimension radius, and I would rather see this pulled up here a little bit instead of being as straight up and down as it was. And then you guys know how to change that to 2x, right? And then over here, DRA, the same thing over here, and this is where it was placed, right? And the reason why they didn't put it down here, whoever did it, is because if you do this, you end up getting this ugliness right here. Right? Now, we can fix this. So what we could do is this. I'm going to go to Properties. And let's go down to Lines and Arrows. And we can fix this by... you think I'd remember, I just did it yesterday. We could turn on the extension line, right? So if we turn the extension line on, now we could just come right in here, and we could also put the 2x in. 2, Shift X, space, and that is acceptable, just like that. Perfect. Again, obviously you need the 2x for this one too. All right, so that's good. And then lastly, just make sure, let's see, we'd have to do what? We'd have to delete. Do we need to go to this one? We don't, but we do need a dimension that goes to here. And we've got one that goes to here, and we got one that goes to here. So we're going to get rid of all these extension lines. And now we just have DLI. And let's put this first one in. Oops. DLI. We'll put this first one in from here to here. So there's our first dimension. Then we could do what? DBA? If we wanted to. I'm going to hit the space bar and pick this as my baseline. I forgot to delete that extension line, so I'll just do that after the fact. I'll put a little window selection and just grab that. And again, you'll notice this isn't as clear and concise as it should be. So the spacing's perfect, but what I want to do is I'm just going to grab that dimension. I'll track straight up, and I'll pop it right there. It looks much better now, right? Let's see here. DCO. And I want to continue from here. And we could pop in. Is that one going down? Yep, we want that to go right to there. So that one's fine. And then lastly, we could do DBA again. So dimension baseline, I'll hit the space bar. And I'll choose. We can pop that one right in. And again, that is going to be a lot clearer if I bring this right down here like such. Bar, I'm missing a couple of radial dimensions. This is what this drawing will look like when you submit it. Obviously, you'd have a filled out title block and all of that. Now, folks, all of these dimensions were added at a 1-to-1 scale. So, I mean, you technically could have put them here, right? Here's the issue with doing that. These are annotative dimensions. And every time you place a dimension, it gets, I'm going to go down to annotative and add delete scales. It gets bound a scale. What scale gets bound to the dimension? Whatever the current scale is. So right now, I'm at 1-to-1. I was also at 1-to-1 in my floating viewport, right? So if you just kind of say, whatever, let's just add them here. It doesn't really matter. What's going to be the problem is this. what if you end up saying that you want your scale to be a half? So I'm going to scale this to a half. I'm going to pretend that I don't have this nice drop down. So I'm going to use zoom to do it instead. I'll type zoom 0.5 XP times paper space. That'll give me a half scale. Right. And did I... Let's try that one more time. Folks, here's another issue that sometimes might happen. You'll notice I don't have my mechanical scales here. Right? What I can do is I can go to Custom, Reset, and choose Metric and Imperial. Now, they're not metric and imperial scales, but that's what AutoCAD calls them, so let's just go with that. And now when I go to the drop-down, I could choose, a half scale here. Right? All right, now, when I choose a half scale, you're going to notice that all my dimensions go away. I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, if I come over here, 1 to 1, they're all here, right? Model space, they're all here, 1 to 1. Right? So why do I say add them in a floating viewport? Well, because you know what your scale's going to be, right? So you've set your scale, you've added your title block, you've done everything you need to do, and then you can add all your dimensions, right? Now, could you fix it? You say, hey, you know what? I need to change this, and I wanted everything to show at a half. You could, but what you're going to have to do is this. You'll have to select your dimensions, and I think you could just do them all at once. Let's try. Maybe not, but we'll see. So if I selected all my dimensions, went to Properties. Now, you couldn't do it with a right-click when you select more than one. But, yeah, so you can't even, right? You're still going to have to do chunks at a time. So we could do rotated dimensions first. And I could go to Annotative Scale and choose to add a half. So I could add a half scale. Now, just those dimensions that I have selected would have, and those are all rotated dimensions, those are all going to now have a half scale also, right? Folks, the other thing that I had selected was, let's see, we had the radial, the angular, and some polylines there too. But, all right, so now you'll notice if we go over to a half, right, you can see your dimensions, and they are the right height. If I go to Paper Space, double click, I go to Paper Space, I do DT, and I draw a piece of text that's 0.125, oops, and let's just say the text is, 0.5 or something, right? That is plotted 0.125, that's the right height, but you'll notice what a mess these dimensions are. Now, could have you done this at a half scale? You could, but your placement of your dimensions would have to be different, right? So, rule of thumb, just place your dimensions in a scale-locked viewport. Model space. Again, note that I'm in model space. Don't place all your dimensions in paper space. Let me show you why. I'm going to switch to paper space here, and let's just say, we added a few dimensions, so we just kind of went through and popped these in, and everything was looking just fine. We had another one that went to here. Right. So this was all looking well and good as we added them. Piece of cake. Right. And lastly, we have a overall that goes from here to here. And we pop that one in too, right? Okay. And obviously you guys would move your text around. Here's the issue, right? These are all in paper space where they don't belong. The rest of them are in model space. What's going to happen is, what if you have to pan or move where your drawing is? So let me unlock my viewport, and I'm going to pan my drawing and say I want my drawing to be over there instead. You'll notice that the dimensions that are in paper space are not actually bound to the object. They didn't go with it. Now, there's a way to update it, but it's kind of a pain many times. Right? Imagine if you had 100 dimensions or 200 dimensions. All of a sudden, you had to pan your view to add another view to a piece of paper or something like that. Or change your scale. Whatever it is, it's going to be a nightmare. So you want these to be in model space where they go. Now, the other thing is this. Anytime I insert one drawing into another drawing, the only thing that comes are model space entities. So if I were to insert this drawing into another one, it would bring all of the dimensions that are in model space. If the dimensions were in paper space, they would not come, and I would not get them in the other drawing. Right? Makes sense, folks? Good? Not bad. Under an hour. All right. Questions at all? Nothing? All right, I'll pretend you guys are out there still, and I'll stop talking. If anyone has any questions, let me know.